So this morning, on this very chilly, very cold winter morning in Sri Vrindavan Dham, we are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 13, entitled The Descendants of King Priyavrata, text number 7. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. This is one of those shlokas which is more like prose, so many words, so we'll just, it's quite long, I'll just chant the first 2 lines, I think. Savaisva dharmena praja palana poshana prina no pala lanu nanu shashana Laksha nene yadhina cha bhagavan mahapurushe paravare brahmani. There's 10 more lines, but translation and commentary by His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. King Gaya gave full protection and security to the citizens so that their personal property would not be disturbed by undesirable elements. He also saw that there was sufficient food to feed all the citizens. This is called poshana. He would sometimes distribute gifts to the citizens to satisfy them. This is called prinana. He would sometimes call meetings and satisfy the citizens with sweet words. This is called upalalana. He would also give them good instructions on how to become first-class citizens. This is called anushasana. Such were the characteristics of King Gaya's royal order. Besides all this, King Gaya was a householder who strictly observed the rules and regulations of household life. He performed sacrifices and was an unalloyed pure devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He was called Mahapurusha because as a king, he gave the citizens all facilities, and as a householder, he executed all his duties so that at the end he became a strict devotee of the Supreme Lord. As a devotee, he was always ready to give respect to other devotees and to engage in the devotional service of the Lord. This is the Bhakti Yoga process. Due to all these transcendental activities, King Gaya was always free from the bodily conception. He was full in Brahman realization, and consequently, he was always jubilant. He did not experience material lamentation. Although he was perfect in all respects, he was not proud, nor was he anxious to rule the kingdom. Purport. As Lord Krishna states in Bhagavad Gita, when he descends on earth, he has 2 types of business: to give protection to the faithful and to annihilate the demons. Paritranaya sharanam vinashaya taduskritam. Since the king is a representative of the personality of Godhead, he is sometimes called Nrisimhadeva, that is, the Lord as a human being. According to the Vedic injunctions, he is worshipped as God on the material platform. As a representative of the Supreme Lord, the king had the duty to protect the citizens in a perfect way so that they would not be anxious for food and protection, and so that they would be jubilant. The king would supply everything for their benefit, and because of this, he would levy taxes. If the king or government otherwise levies taxes on the citizens, he becomes responsible for the sinful activities of the citizens. In Kali Yuga, monarchy is abolished because the kings themselves are subjected to the influence of Kali Yuga. It is understood from the Ramayana that when Bhibhishana became friends with Lord Ramachandra, he promised that if by chance or will he broke the law of friendship with Lord Ramachandra, he would become a brahmana or a king in Kali Yuga. In this age, as Bhibhishana indicated, both brahmanas and kings are in a most wretched condition. Actually, there are no kings or brahmanas in this age, and due to their absence, the whole world is in a chaotic condition and always in distress. Compared to present standards, King Gaya was a true representative of Lord Vishnu. Therefore, he was known as a Mahapurusha. Oma Gyan Timirandasya Ginangena Shilakaya Chaksuni Militam Jena Tasmai Sigurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Mano Vishnam Shtapitam Jena Bhutale Shwayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadanti Sva Badantikam Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakti Vrindam Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama. So, in this beautiful verse of Srimad Bhagavatam, we hear how a king in particular, because Prabhupada stresses this point twice or thrice above all the other points he mentions in his purport, a king, a ruler, is meant to give protection to his citizens. In particular, Srila Prabhupada mentions elsewhere in a purport in Srimad Bhagavatam, protection is meant to be given to the innocent, Prabhupada calls them the innocent members of society. Who are the innocent members of society? Prabhupada says the children, the ladies, the cows, and the brahmanas. These are the innocent members of society. Generally, such members of society, as Prabhupada calls them, are not so physically powerful, and thus they're sometimes, or in some countries often, they're exploited by the asuras or the demons. The Padma Purana is very clear that in this material creation there are two types of men. It is stated, Dvabhuta Sargo Lokoshmin, Daiva Ashura Evacha, Vishnu Bhakta Smito Daiva Ashurishtad Viparyaha. The Padma Purana says, there are two classes of men in the created world. One consists of the demoniac and the other the godly. The devotees of Lord Vishnu are the godly, whereas those who are just the opposite are called asuras. So all of you fit into the class of the godly, don't worry. Actually in Bhagavad Gita, when Krishna is explaining divine and demoniac qualities, there's one verse where he assures Arjuna, don't worry, Arjuna, you're not of the demoniac class, you're of the godly class. So following the Lord, we are saying that you are all in the godly class. There's a striking difference between these two classes of men, the godly and the asuras. The godly, who are known as Vaishnavas or devotees of Lord Krishna, they're always concerned about the spiritual upliftment of others. Actually, this is what distinguishes a Vaishnava even from other classes of transcendentalists. There's yogis, there's jnanis, and there's bhaktas. There's three classes of transcendentalists. And we offer our respect to all three classes because they all realize the temporary, miserable nature of this world, and they're trying to transcend this world, to transcendence. But the Vaishnavas are particularly admirable because they're not concerned only with their own deliverance, they're concerned with the deliverance of all others, including even people like Jagai and Madhai. So they're very special Vaishnavas. Whereas the demoniac, they take pleasure in exploiting others, actually. They actually take pleasure in causing harm. That's their source of happiness when they can cause pain. A Vaishnava, his source of happiness is relieving people of pain. It's hard for us to understand, but a demoniac person, because we're Vaishnava, it's difficult to understand, a demoniac person takes pleasure in causing suffering, anxiety to others. So two classes of men. So the rulers, the kings, or the prime minister, or the president, or whatever you may call them today, they have to always be on guard to protect the citizens from the demoniac. This is the meaning of Kshatriya. A king is a Kshatriya. And Kshatriya, if you break down the word Kshatriya, it means to protect from harm. Trayate means to protect, Kshatra, from harm. So if you're a Kshatriya, if you have a big physical body and a diplomatic mind, and you have courage, and you don't shy away from battle, you have those characteristics which are inborn you due to your karma, then your duty is to protect others from harm, Kshatriya. So this is one of the duties of the king. And although all members of society are actually important, because all of us are Harijan. Harijan means Jana, just like we had our godbrother Vishnu Jana Maharaj. So Jana means people, so Vishnu Jana means the people of Vishnu, or Braja Jana, the people of Braj. So everyone is Harijan, everyone is a part and parcel of the Lord. Krishna says in the Gita that he's the seed-giving father of all living entities. So although we have our favorites, we may have our friends and enemies, in the eyes of the Lord, everyone is equal ultimately because they're all his children. So everyone is Harijana. So the king, being a representative of the Lord, he offers protection to the Prajna. Prajna, Prabhupada said, means all the citizens of society are given protection. Nevertheless, the king must give special attention to the cows and the brahmanas to make sure that they're safe and secure. Because by protecting cows, the king ensures that most of the economic needs of society can be met, at least in Vedic culture. Prabhupada explains in Vedic culture, if one has a cow and a bull, he can meet all his economic needs and 1 acre of land. That's the formula. Cow, a bull, and 1 acre of land in Vedic culture. Because from the cow, you get the milk. And the milk is described in Bhagavatam as a miracle foodstuff. This is our definition of milk, a miracle foodstuff, because by drinking that milk, you nourish the finer tissues of the brain, whereby you can understand the philosophy of the Bhagavatam to become Krishna conscious. And with milk you can make ghee, which is used in sacrifice. And sacrifice is so important. Krishna says in the Gita, in the beginning I sent forth generation of men and demigods, and blessed them by the performance of sacrifice, yajna, all desirable things will be bestowed upon you. Yajna vai Vishnu. There can be no prosperity, materially or spiritually, in society without acknowledging the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Yajna is so important. Of course, these days we don't use much ghee in our sacrifice because our sacrifice is going out and chanting the holy names in public. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama. But still, part of our process in Krishna consciousness, we have our yajnas at auspicious moments, various samskaras in life, and we're performing the fire yajna. So without the yajna, without the milk, without the ghee, not possible to perform yajna. So cows are so important. And the bull, he plows the fields, and by plowing the fields we get the grains and the vegetables and the fruits to live a healthy life. And also by protecting the cow, the king gets the blessings of the Lord because he's known as Govindaji. Govinda means he gives pleasure to the cows. So cows are very important in Vedic culture. So the king's responsibility is to make sure that the cows are protected. Unfortunately, nowadays in Bharat, in India, I hate to even say this in the sanctified atmosphere of this temple room, but India is one of the main exporters of cow's flesh to the world. This is unthinkable in Bharata, but this is actually going on. And secondly, the king must be especially careful to protect the brahmana class of men, because the brahmanas, their specific duty is to disseminate spiritual knowledge in human society. That's the duty of the brahman. In Vedic cultures, brahmana's activity was just to sit and speak the absolute truth, to direct people on the path back home, back to Godhead. Atato brahmajinasya. The Vedanta Sutra states very clearly that the purpose of life is self-realization, to become Krishna conscious. That's the Panam Gati, that's the goal. Everything else ultimately is secondary. Of course, everything's important in its own relative way, but the utmost importance of life is to become Krishna conscious. So, how to become Krishna conscious? Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Shmaranam, to begin with. Hearing and chanting the glories of the Lord brings Vishnu Shmaranam, or Krishna Smaranam, remembrance of the Lord. So that's the duty of the brahmanas. They're always there to remind us, because we're always getting distracted by the temporary beauty of this world. It's so easy. Even great souls may sometimes be distracted. So to keep our mind, Eke Kudunandana, fixed on the goal, we have to regularly hear from the enlightened portion of society by regular attendance in the Bhagavatam class and by rendering service to the pure devotees, Bhagavatam says. All that is inauspicious in the heart becomes destroyed almost at nil, and irrevocable, loving devotional service to the Lord becomes manifest. So this hearing the Bhagavatam, reading the scriptures, associating with devotees who are discussing, this is so important. This is the duty of brahmanas. This is what they do. The Sudras are busy building temples to the Lord and so forth, and the Vaishyas are busy milking the cows and doing business. That's also important. The Kshatriyas are protecting. But brahmanas, their service is no less important. They're just sitting in one place getting a big belly. Yeah, Brahmana is characterized by the fact, because he doesn't do that much physical activity, he gets all the maha. Brahmanas have that belly, and they're not embarrassed about it. Nowadays, if you have a little midriff bulge, it's considered, not, people are embarrassed, but Brahmins, they're a little plump like that. All day long, speaking, enlightening, because without that knowledge, we can't get out of the entanglement of material life into the reality of the spiritual world. We depend so much upon the Brahmana Vaishnavas in particular. Therefore, Chanakya Pandit stresses this knowledge so much. He says, Savari Bhushanam Chandro, Narinam Bhushanam Pati, Prithvi Bhushanam Raja, Vidya Sarvasha Bhushanam. Chanakya Pandit. He says, Savari Bhushanam Chandra, the ornament of night is the moon. And then Narinam Bhushanam Pati, the ornament of a woman is a pious Krishna conscious husband. Prithvi Bhushanam Raja, the ornament of the earth is a pious king. And Vidya Sarvasha Bhushanam. This is the punchline. They're all important, but Chanakya Pandit is giving other points to come to this ultimate punchline. Vidya Sarvasha Bhushanam. Knowledge is the ornament of everything. Therefore, Prabhupada said one time, my only complaint about my disciples, because all of them were working or are working so hard to help him in his mission, he said, my only complaint is they don't read my books. Because you can't give something you don't have. So if this movement is meant to disseminate knowledge as an entire body, a society, the members have to know the philosophy and live the philosophy, become purified, to become empowered preachers. So knowledge is so important. That's the duty of the brahmanas. So the cows for the material necessities of life, because we need material necessities, at least the basic necessities, so that we can be peaceful, to sit, study the Shastra, and chant. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama. Vedic knowledge, Vedic culture teaches us how to live life in the most simplest way to meet the demands, the material demands. It teaches us that science so that we have time to chant Hare Krishna. Actually, Prabhupada explains in one lecture that Vedic culture was so nice, it was based on protecting the cows and cultivating the land, that the planting season was there, and the growing season was there, and the harvesting was there. That was kind of by nature's way. People were very busy planting the seeds, watering and harvesting, but Prabhupada said that took about 7 months altogether to plant, to cultivate the land, and to harvest the grains. He said it took 7 months. So people in Vedic culture, I heard the lecture, Prabhupada said, people had 5 months free. 5 months free. Nowadays you're lucky if you get, in Europe you get 1 month vacation. In America you get 2 weeks vacation. And even then, people are so afraid of losing their job. If they go away, they take 3 or 4 days vacation. And that's not enough time to actually rest from all the many months of work. But Vedic culture was so nice. Simple living, Prabhupada said, with high thinking. Nowadays life is so complicated, people don't have time to think about the higher values of life. But most important, just like there's perfect, more perfect, and most perfect, Jiva Goswami says. Perfect is Dwarka, more perfect is Mathura, but most perfect is Sri Vrindavan Dham on the transcendental platform. So most important is the king should give protection to the best of the brahmanas. Who are the best of the brahmanas? The best of the brahmanas are the Vaishnavas and the Vaishnavis. All Vaishnavas are naturally brahmanas, but not all brahmanas are devotees of the Lord. Some brahmanas are demigod worshippers, and some are worshippers of the absolute, the impersonal aspect. But Vaishnavas are naturally brahmanas because they live in the mode of goodness, but they're transcendental even to the mode of goodness, Suddha Sattva, because they worship the all-good personality of God. They're on the transcendental platform. So such devotees of the Lord, the king must give them special protection because they're special persons. They have a special function in society. They're always giving the good example of finishing up their material existence. And as I mentioned earlier, while doing so, they're also delivering others from material existence. They're setting the perfect example of what human life should be. How to live in this world in such a way that by the end of life, you're fully Krishna conscious and you go back home, back to Godhead. That's the Vaishnava. As Jesus said, to be in this world, but not of this world. Devotees are in this world, but they're not of this world. They're special souls. Their goal is Vaikuntha. So they're doing what is ever necessary to keep things together, but they're very intent on going back home, back to God as the purpose of life. So they're setting a very good example. And while they're ascending to the spiritual world, they're trying to pick up as many conditioned souls as they can, enlighten them in Krishna consciousness, and take them back home, back to Godhead. They're doing the real welfare work. Some people have a soft heart for the suffering of others, and we respect that. They're opening hospitals, they're giving medicine, they're giving food, they're giving shelter. We respect that. But according to Rupa Goswami, the ultimate welfare work, if you have a soft heart for the suffering of others, then you should know the ultimate welfare work is to give people Krishna consciousness. Because by going back to Godhead, all problems are solved. That's called panacea in English. Panacea is a special word. Panacea means a solution to all problems. So they talk about the panacea, this, the ultimate panacea is back home, back to Godhead. Abrahma bhuvanaloka punar arvitu arjuna mamopetete kontiya punar janmana vidyate. Punar janmana vidyate, because Krishna says, having once gone there, you never come back again. All problems solved. From a world which is temporary, full of suffering and ignorance, you go to a world which is eternal, full of knowledge and bliss. One time a devotee, a disciple asked Prabhupada, when we get back to the spiritual world, do we remember, that we were in the material world? And Prabhupada said, yes. But you remember it like a nightmare. Like a bad dream. So you don't want to come back. You may have had the experience, you have a horrible dream and then you wake up at night and then you're hesitant to go back to sleep because you may fall into that same dream. So in the same way, when we get back to the spiritual world, we may remember, yes, I lived in Delhi, I lived in London, I lived in New York. That's nothing compared to Vaikuntha. This is Kuntha, this is a place of anxiety. That place is Vaikuntha, that place where there's no anxiety. So they just don't come back. So such devotees are very special because they're setting a good example and they're concerned about the spiritual welfare of others. One time a devotee said to Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada, everyone loves you. And Prabhupada said, yes, that's because I love everyone. This is the perfect Vaishnava. How special are Vaishnavas is described by Lord Shiva in the Padma Purana. Radhanam sarvesham Vishnu radhanam param tasmat parataram devi tadiyanam samarjanam. Lord Shiva told the goddess Durga, my dear Devi, although the Vedas mention worship of the demigods, the worship of Lord Vishnu is topmost and is ultimately recommended. However, above the worship of Lord Vishnu is the rendering of service to Vaishnavas who are related to Lord Vishnu. So the king knew these things. Evam parampara praptam, it's mentioned in the Gita. This knowledge was received through the disciplic succession, and the saintly kings understood it in this way. These kings were not like, modern politicians who were more or less just interested in their self-esteem, getting, money to put away in the Swiss bank accounts or whatever. These kings were Raja Rishis. They were Kshatriyas, but due to their desire, they were saintly persons sitting on the throne, Raja Rishis. So they knew these things. They were able to recognize the sadhus, and they took care of the sadhus. They made sure the sadhus had the basic necessities so they could live their exemplary life and preach Krishna consciousness. So the kings are especially meant to protect the Vaishnavas and the Vaishnavis. And such devotees of the Lord, they humbly accept the protection of the king so they can go about their Krishna conscious business. However, such devotees of the Lord know that even the most powerful king, with all his armies and his weapons and his prestige and his power, cannot ultimately protect them in this world of birth and death. So although we're thankful for the protection of a government so that we can peacefully practice Krishna consciousness, like in America, other countries you can't peacefully practice Krishna consciousness, you have to go underground. Even in China now, the devotees are still, to a certain degree, underground. So we respect governments, democratically elected governments, that give us our religious freedom and protect our rights for practicing spiritual life. But ultimately we know that although a king's duty, Kshatriya, is to protect us, no one can ultimately protect you in this world of birth and death except Krishna. Therefore, ultimately, devotees take shelter of the Lord to be protected in this world. Just like Uttara, when that Brahmastra weapon was coming towards her, because the Brahmastra is a special weapon. It's an atomic weapon, it's a nuclear weapon. But the nature of that nuclear weapon is that the person who threw the Brahmastra, he would throw it at one particular individual, and it wouldn't hurt the general population or destroy the buildings or whatever. It was such an amazing weapon. Just shoot it to, imagine, just one atomic weapon just for you, obliterated. So this weapon was thrown at, Aswatthama threw the weapon at Uttara to kill the child in her womb, Parikshit. So when that powerful weapon was coming for her, to whom did she take shelter of? The king? No. She took shelter of the Lord. Pahi pahi mahayogim deva deva jagatpate nanyam tvadabayam pasye yatra mityu parashparam. So I love that verse. Pahi pahi mahayogim deva deva jagatpate nanyam tvadabayam pasye yatra mityu parashparam. O Lord of Lords, O Lord of the universe, you are the greatest of mystics. You know, she's praying to the Lord for shelter, but she starts by glorifying the Lord, transcendental characteristics, qualities. You can imagine the Brahmastra is coming. O Lord of Lords, Lord of the universe, you are the greatest of mystics. Please protect me, for there is no one else who can save me from the clutches of death in this world of death. So why are devotees so eager for protection? So they can go on enjoying the world? No. Because they know they need time to become Krishna conscious. It takes a whole lifetime to become Krishna conscious. Sometimes it takes lifetimes. Vasudeva sarvamiti samahatma sadurlabha. Krishna says, after many, many lifetimes, my devotee fully surrenders unto me. So it takes time. We don't want to, due to some accident, some tragedy, die early. We need the full scale of 100 years they give you in Kali Yuga, or 90 or whatever it is now, 80 or 70. We need that time. We don't want to leave prematurely. I remember in 1971, I had a godbrother, African-American black-bodied devotee. His name was Jananivas. Probably gave the name several times. I just joined the movement, and he was tragically killed in a car accident. And Prabhupada wrote a letter to the temple president. And I remember when the temple president was reading that letter to all of us, I noted how Prabhupada said that unfortunately, this devotee had left the world untimely. Of course, we have our philosophy, there's the karma, but in this instance, Prabhupada, he said this devotee left untimely. It means that he didn't have the opportunity to live a full life so that he could become fully Krishna conscious when he left this world. Which means it takes time. Cheto darpana marjanam, to cleanse the heart. Ado shraddha tata sadhu sangha bhajana kriya narta nirviti siyat. This is the process. Step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. And by the time you've cleansed the heart, then you have to become steady, you have to develop ruchi, you have to have bhav, and then you get prem. You don't just, there's no shortcuts, as we've all experienced. When we first joined the movement, remember, the philosophy amongst the rank and file devotees that, we're going to save the world in 10 years. We're going to become pure devotees, and we're going to flood the world with Krishna consciousness, and in 10 years, everyone's going to be chanting 16 rounds, following four other principles, and all war will be stopped. A little naive. Those of you senior devotees, you know what I'm talking about. We really thought that, that was our youthful enthusiasm. Nothing wrong with that. But a little naive. 45 years later, we're still chanting, but no tears are coming to the eyes. It takes time to become Krishna conscious. We've been in this material world since time immemorial. Not even a date is given. It's just such a long time. Brahmanda Brahmati Konya Bhagavan Jeev Guru Krishna Prasad Pai Bhakti Lat Bij. What have we been doing since we left the spiritual world? Traveling, Traveler's Nightmare. There's one play called The Traveler's Nightmare in London, England, we used to do. One universe to the next, one species of life to the next, one body to the next. This business has been going on for a long time. So we've accumulated a lot of dirt in the heart. When you travel a lot, you get dirty. You have to take a bath. So due to our traveling through the material world, we have accumulated so much lust, so much anger, so much greed. It's ingrained in the heart. It's like if you're cooking milk and you get a little bit distracted and you burn the milk at the bottom of the pot, it becomes black. Then you try to scrub that pot. If you remember a pot washer, you've all been pot washers, humble service. You get the pot and the milk black, the bottom. To scrub that, it takes a lot of elbow grease, we say in America. So what to speak of our hearts? It's not so easy. And then the whole process of awakening our divine love for Radhe Shyam. So it takes time. So we need protection because this is a dangerous world. The devotee is under no illusion about the dangers of life. He's not thinking that danger is only in far-off places like Iraq and Syria and Afghanistan. It's said that most accidents happen within 2 kilometers of the home. Of course, modern man is thinking that with material progress, the situation is better these days. There's better police forces, there's safer roads, there's improved medicine. Things may appear to be a little safer, but we have a saying in Europe. I spent many years preaching in France. They have a saying there that accidents happen even on the royal road. In France, in Paris, there used to be a special road for the king to come in from Versailles to Paris, la rue de Paris, de Versailles. The king, Louis XVI, I believe, he built this beautiful palace outside of Paris called the Palais de Versailles. And whenever he had to come into Paris for royal affairs, he didn't just go on the common road like the commoners. They built a special road for the king and the queen to come on the carriages. It was, there were no bumps and it was perfectly smooth, and there were different guards along the whole way, with spears and so forth. So very, very safe. But there are instances where, the carriage was coming along and the wheel broke and the carriage fell down and the queen bumped her head. And the king got a cut. So off with the head of somebody. So my point is that there are dangers. Just the other day, myself and Badahari, we were in Hong Kong. There was a festival for the Chinese devotees, and we were on our way from where we were staying to the hall where the program was, and we were driving in a taxi. I was in the front seat, and it was one of these old Hong Kong taxis, and I always very careful to wear the seat belt, but this seat belt didn't work. It was broken. It only went this far. So, it's praying, Hare Krishna, Allah Akbar. And sure enough, I'm chanting and we're going along, and one lady, she's coming from the other direction, and she turns right in front of us to go into a driveway. Our driver, you never think these things are going to happen to you. It always happens to people in the newspapers, on the TV. When it happens to you, you're like, why me? And fortunately, our driver hit the brakes in time, and we smashed in. I just got a little whiplash, in my neck, but everyone else was okay, and we counted our blessings from the Lord. But these act as wake-up calls for devotees, because these things, they happen. And Bhagavatam says, it warns us, padam padam yat vipadam natesham. Hey, there's danger at every step in this material world. Actually, one might wonder how people can go on enjoying in this world, oblivious to the dangers of material existence. You know, if you read the newspapers, there's no good news, it's all bad news about people's sufferings. So what happens to all, one happens to all. Eventually something will come up in our karmic deposit that, you know, there'll be some danger, some trauma, some calamity. How can people go on, you know, oblivious to this and not seek out the alternative of Krishna consciousness? It makes you wonder sometimes. But the example has been given of the deer who's drinking water at the lake. You know, it's a still day and there's no wind and the water, you can see your reflection in the lake. So the sadhus give the analogy, the deer is drinking the water in the lake and she becomes so enchanted by her own reflection, she doesn't notice or hear the tiger who's slowly approaching her from behind until the last moment, he jumps on her. So the sadhus say that our situation is very similar. We're also attracted by our own reflection. Mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all? Oh, you are. Actually, I looked up that, I don't want to call it a shloka. I looked at that quote the other day, and it comes from the story of Snow White in its original format. The story of Snow White has gone through different different evolutions of storytelling, but originally the queen, who was envious of Snow White, said to the mirror, "Mirror, who's the fairest of them all? Mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest? You are." So of course, when we look into the mirror, we try to see our good side, and we adjust things, you know, looking, oh, okay. And not only that, but just our own reflection. The nature of this world is that, you know, our attachment is not just to our body, but our attachment is also to our extended body in the form of our wife and our husband, our children, our house, our car. We're also enchanted by these things, as the Bhagavatam says, Deha patya kala tradishu. Persons devoid of Atma Tattva do not inquire into the problems of life. Being too attached to the fallible soldiers like the body, children, and wife, although sufficiently experienced, they still do not see their inevitable destruction. So because people are distracted by the so-called beauty of this world, they're enchanted by it, they're oblivious to the problems, the duality of material existence. There's hot, there's cold. There's up, there's down, there's black, there's white. There's happiness and there's distress. There's peace and there's war. We become distracted and we don't seek a solution to the problem. We don't feel a sense of urgency for Krishna consciousness. Therefore, a brahmana, his wealth is his austerity. He tries to cut down that intoxication, that enchantment with material life by living a little on the edge, not to become so infatuated. He purposefully lives a life of austerity so that he lives in reality about the nature of this world. He doesn't mind being austere. He doesn't mind. Keeps him on the edge. Life's a little tough. Yes. So what's the solution? Chant, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. And so he prepares himself for those difficult moments when they come. And when they come, he naturally takes shelter of Krishna. A person who's not prepared, when difficulties come, they take shelter, speculation, intoxication, or drinking. But a devotee, he's prepared. I remember when we had this car crash the other day, from the back seat I heard, Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Hare. Oh, that's nice. My godbrothers are prepared. This is devotee. We're aware of these things, so we know that when these difficulties come, we take shelter. And who do we take shelter especially of? We take shelter of the Lord in his form of personified perfection, Nrisimhadeva. Nrisimhadeva is a very popular deity in Krishna consciousness. Actually, we are Krishna Bhaktas, or more specifically, we're Gaur Bhaktas, because Lord Chaitanya is the incarnation for this age, and without the mercy of Lord Chaitanya, we can't understand or enter into the pastimes of Radha and Krishna. But somehow or other, Lord Nrisimhadeva has become very popular. Actually, Prabhupada introduced the worship of Lord Nrisimhadeva early in the movement when our temple in Los Angeles was attacked one day by some hoodlums, as we used to say. Prabhupada came down for the Bhagavatam class that morning. It was actually the attack happened very early in the morning. Some boys came by and threw a pipe bomb into the temple, through the window, into the pujari room. It exploded. Fortunately, no devotees were seriously injured, but many of the deities' clothes were burned up, etc. So Prabhupada came down half hour later to give Bhagavatam class, and there's a famous tape, you can hear it. He introduces word by word the prayers for protection to Lord Nrisimhadeva. Namaste Narasimhaya Paladala Hridayane Hiranyakashipu. Word by word, he asks the devotees to repeat. And the next morning he does the same thing. So Lord Krishna in his form as Lord Nrisimhadeva is especially meant for the protection of the devotees, so that they have time to become Krishna conscious, and so that they can perform the most important welfare activity of spreading Krishna consciousness. Lord Nrisimhadeva is there to give protection. That's specifically his function. When the Lord comes to this material world, he has, according to the Gita, he has three specific functions. Paritranaya sadhanam, vinashaya taduskritam, dharma samstapanartaya. When an incarnation comes, they protect devotees, they kill the asuras, and they reestablish dharma, generally by speaking transcendental knowledge like Bhagavad Gita. Interestingly enough, when Lord Nrisimhadeva came, he didn't do all that. He just did paritranaya sadhanam. He just appeared from a pillar, fought Hiranyakashipu for a few moments, like a cat plays with a mouse, killed him, entertained Prahlad with some transcendental knowledge, and then he went back to the spiritual world. His sole purpose was giving protection to his devotee. Actually, Lord Nrisimhadeva, he appears many times in this world to protect Prahlad Maharaj. These pastimes are repeated at different times, different parts of the universe. The pastime that we read about, mentioned in the 7th canto, happened on higher planets, but Lord Nrisimhadeva actually appeared on this earth in one incarnation. That's in Ahovalam in South India. That place was visited by Lord Chaitanya, Ramanujacharya, etc. It's authentic. And each time Lord Nrisimhadeva appears, the pastime may be a little bit different. In the Nrsimha Purana, it's described that the Lord appeared from a pillar. One time he appeared from a lotus flower. One time he just walked into town. I was reading the Nrsimha Purana. The same pastime, Hiranyakashipu is harassing Prahlad, and everyone says, "Oh my gosh," and they look out the palace door and Nrisimhadeva is walking into town. Same thing, he takes Hiranyakashipu and kills him like that. So it's a little, but he's always there particularly, so devotees, when there's danger, they take shelter of Nrisimhadeva. You could say that Nrisimhadeva is Lord Krishna's anger personified. Anger at what? The asuras who are attempting to harm the devotees. So when you come in harm's way, President Obama likes to use this, we don't want to put our troops in harm's way. We don't want the people to come in harm's way. When you come into harm's way, which you may, You may be a statistic in the newspaper one day. Harm's way may come. What do you do? Ugramviram Mahavishnum Jwalantam Sarvato Mukam Nashringam Vishanam Bhadram Mrityum Namamyaham. I offer my respectful obeisances to Lord Nrisimhadeva, the fierce and powerful Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Vishnu. His flaming mouth faces in all directions. He is terrifying yet auspicious, for he is the death of death. So if death is, you come in harm's way, there's death, you can chant, Uguram Viram Mahavishnu Dvalantam Savato Mukam Nashringam Vishanam Bhadram Mishto. In the 8th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, Prabhupada says in a purport, it's very interesting, that the Lord may actually delay a devotee's death. He may alter things in such a way that a devotee may have been destined to die, but for the purpose of service to the Lord, a devotee may have a very important service. Prabhupada says in the purport, the Lord may change that date, give you a few more days, a few more months, a few more years. And we saw that in the case of a pure devotee like our own spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada. Here in Vrindavan, 1977, Prabhupada came here to leave this world, to go back to Goloka Vrindavan. But it was unthinkable for all of us as disciples that Prabhupada would leave. We didn't feel that we were ready yet. So some members of the GBC very emotionally appealed to Srila Prabhupada, please don't go yet, we're not ready. So Prabhupada said almost nonchalantly, let me ask Krishna. So he closed his eyes and it appeared that he was sleeping, but he was actually in deep meditation, samadhi. And he opened his eyes. Some minutes later he said, all right, Krishna said I can stay a little longer. This is there on the Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita, that pastime. That's an example of Prabhupada's statement in the 8th canto, that although a devotee is destined to die for the purpose of service, a devotee can be protected and live a little bit longer. So the Lord is there to protect his devotees, and it's quite clear he will do so. Of course, we have to remember that protection, like all other forms of mercy, is given by the Lord in proportion to our surrender to him. Krishna says in Gita, all of them as they surrender unto me, I reward them accordingly. So if we want full protection from the Lord, we have to be fully surrendered. Just like there's different types of insurance policies. You know, some insurance policies protect you for this, but they don't protect you for that. Just like I've got an insurance policy that is given only to expats, expatriates, people who live mostly outside of America. If you live, I think, 10 months outside of America, insurance policies give you a special plan where you receive full protection. Like if I'm in someplace like China or Paraguay or wherever, and there's not many good doctors or whatever, you know, I can be airlifted by helicopter back to the nearest reputable medical facility. It's costly, but I took that policy out because I spent a lot of time in these far-off places. So, padam padam yat vipadam teshan. I take the wisdom of the Bhagavatam very seriously. So I have this insurance. I'm fully protected. I mean, as much as you could say, that's there. So you can have a partial insurance policy or full. So if we're fully surrendered to the Lord, like Srila Prabhupada, then we can have full protection. So it's important to become Atmanivedanam, fully surrendered to the Lord, to receive His full blessings and His full protection. But at the same time, we know that if we receive the protection of the Lord, it's important that we don't take such protection for granted. A devotee does have some special protection. Nrisimhadeva is there for the devotees, but if he protects his servants, it's to allow them to continue their purification of heart and their most important the most important service in society, again, preaching Krishna consciousness. Just like if a president pardons a convicted killer, it's with the understanding that that pardoned criminal will be a good citizen. So if we as devotees of the Lord have this special, you could say, facility to call upon the Lord, Tabakara kamala barena kamadbhuta singham dalita. Here, every time, many devotees, when they get in a car, before they start the journey, Namaste Nrisimhadeva, isn't it? Before you begin, we often call upon the mercy of the Lord. So if we get that protection, then it's important that, we utilize that protection to do serious bhajan, to take advantage of our good fortune, and be conscientious when we're doing our devotional activities, and become serious preachers as well. We don't just get the protection and be lazy folks. We take advantage of the protection of a little extra time to chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Of course, ultimately we have to die. So we should understand that, why did that devotee die if Krishna is protecting us? Well, he reasons ill who says that Vaishnavas die when thou art living still and sound. Vaishnava dies to live, and while living tries to spread the holy name around. When we die, it's just another opportunity for devotional service. This body's not going to last forever. Neither do we want to live forever in this body. We were recently visiting a Gujarati family in Hong Kong, and Grandma came out to see us. And Grandma was old school. Ram, 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 Ram. How are you? Ram, Ram, Ram. What are you doing today? Ram, 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 Ram. How old are you? Ram, 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 Ram. I don't want to stay here. I want to go to Ram, 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 Ram. I said, please, put your feet on my head. She was 95. I said, what do you do today? Ram, 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 Ram. And we went to her room. She had volumes of books stacked to the ceiling, all just written the name of Ram. All day she writes the name of Ram. She's crying, please tell Ram I want to go home. I want to go to a yogi. I want to get out of here. I was saying, gosh, I wish I had that lolium, that greed for Krishna consciousness. So it's not that we want to stay. We want, this body is an obstacle to pure devotional service in many ways. It goes to sleep for 6 hours a night. And it gets sick, and we can't perform our devotional service. So we don't mind when death comes. Death means a new life, a new chapter. And if we're fortunate, death means the beginning of an eternal life in the spiritual world. Just like Prabhupada posthumously wrote to my godbrother, Jayananda, Krishna is very kind, Prabhupada wrote. He's taken away your diseased body and given you a spiritual body just suitable to your desires to serve him. Death is the opportunity to make that quantum leap back home, back to God. We're not afraid to die. We're afraid to live in this world perpetually and experience birth, disease, old age, and death. But for the time being, the king is a representative of Krishna, and he's meant to give the citizens protection so they can utilize their lives for becoming Krishna conscious and finish up their existence here. So we should pray to him and the Lord for safe passage. Of course, you could say, in conclusion, you might think, well, actually, that's not pure devotional service to pray to the Lord for protection. We just pray to the Lord for service. Especially, why should a devotee ask the Lord for some material benediction to protect the body? But Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur states in his commentary to the Srimad Bhagavatam on the pastime of Gajendra Moksha that it's okay for a Vaishnava or a Vaishnavi to pray for protection of their body to the Lord if they're using that body in the service of the Lord, and if that service gives pleasure to the Lord. We don't want to disturb the Lord's service, his seva. So if you're going to use your body to serve the Lord, according to Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, it's okay to pray for protection. Especially if you're somehow or other, directly, indirectly, serving the Sankirtan movement of Lord Chaitanya. There's such an urgent need for spreading this movement. Every devotee is special in that regard, helpful. So as Bhattahari Prabhu concluded his class yesterday by saying that we should all become Krishna conscious, go back to the spiritual world and take as many fallen souls back with us at the same time, we can pray like that. And that was in the mood of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, his concluding words to his purports to Shri Chaitanya Shikshamrita. Bhaktivinoda Thakur concludes. He said, in the teachings of Sriman Mahaprabhu, there are only two principal instructions to the devotees. One, develop a taste for chanting the holy names, and two, display compassion for the fallen conditioned souls. So that takes time, so we pray to the Lord for protection so that we can perfect our chanting and give the chanting of Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama to the world. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Gaur Premanandi.